Welcome to IDG Chit Chat Live for the week of February 23rd, 2015. On this episode, we'll be talking about wrapping up the Genealogy Roadshow Season 2 and our personal family mysteries we would like to submit to the show. Hi, my name is Shannon Combs-Bennett, and I'm the Creative Director for the In-Depth Genealogist. Joining me this evening are Jennifer Alford, Publisher, and Terry O'Connell, Executive Director. Hello, ladies. How are you today?
Hey, Shannon.
Hey, Shannon, I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. Getting ready for round 2 of snow this week, right?
Yeah.
Hey, it was a heat wave here in Virginia. It got up to 41 at my house. I'm kind of happy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it
We
was
were
really
excited
nice.
about 33.
I was excited about 20 over the weekend, but heck, 41.
I know. My kids came home and they're like, we're getting 6 inches tomorrow. And I'm like, yay. But anyway, this week's Genealogy Roadshow was a best of episode. So it was a great way to see a lot of the awesome and tearjerker episodes that we've come to love over the last 2 seasons. Did you ladies see any of your favorites mentioned? How about you, Terry? One of your favorites mentioned?
The last week's episode that had the Holocaust in it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
it was really good.
It it's very much a tearjerker, and just to see how it affected her before she even knew the family was related to her, it gets you right in the heart each time.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. That's one of those stories I think that people are going to be talking about for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Jen?
Well, it's funny. Like I know I watched the first season, but when I started watching the stories that were from then, I was like really struggling to remember what, when it had happened and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of it was kind of almost fresh for me, hearing the stories over and over again. But there really wasn't any that really stood out. There were a lot of emotional ones, which, makes for good TV. So I could certainly understand that.
Oh, yeah, I kind of have to agree with you. I thought it was a good episode in that it gave people who maybe weren't familiar with the first season or didn't see them all, it gave them a good recap, kind of the highlights from season 1. And then if you came in late to season 2 or you're just now catching up, you could see some of the better ones. And now, since they're online, you can go back out and watch them again, right?
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Well, we're done for the year with Genealogy Roadshow. We now have a next week. There is no new genealogy television on, and then on the 8th is the premiere of Who Do You Think You Are? So, wow, what are we gonna do next week? I guess we're gonna watch reruns of Who Do You Think You Are on TLC because I noticed that they've started playing those this week.
Oh, have they?
Yeah, my little DVR has been taping nonstop, it seems.
I watched Lisa Kudrow's episode today.
I did too, and that one always gets me.
Oh,
It's a real hard one. But at least
good.
it has a happy ending, right?
it does.
Yeah, that was really awesome. I just recently watched one of the BBC versions, the original, of Who Do You Think You Are with Billy Connolly.
Oh, that was a good one.
It was awesome. I just love him. He is just so down to earth, very friendly, and then he's going to India and finding out about his ancestors, and it was really cool. So I've got to watch more of the BBC ones, and I doubt I'll ever get the chance to catch up on, was it 10 or 15 years worth? But
yeah.
but yeah, it'll be fun trying.
It's I like that one, and I think at times I like that one. Okay, so this is gonna sound really bad. Some of the people, even on the American version, I have no idea who they are. Either I'm just not into pop culture, obviously. But I love the stories, which is one of the reasons why I like Genealogy Roadshow, because they're ordinary people. I don't know who they are. I'm just in it for the story.
Right.
So watching the British one, I want to say that there might be, like, from last seasons, maybe a quarter of them who I could actually go, oh, I know who they are. The
Yeah.
other ones I had to go out and Google, or we were with IMDb on the iPad during the episode going, who the heck is this person and why are they on this show? I mean, they have to have some reason, right?
Yeah.
But, just seeing those episodes from I guess, I don't know who you are, it doesn't matter to me that you're famous, is just an
Mm,
interesting perspective. So it's
that's
cool
true.
when you respect them for their artwork, but it's just as good of a story. And the one thing I like about the BBC version for a lot of them, sometimes they just focus on one person or one story
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
for the entire hour.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily a journey because the ones here in America tend to be more of a multi-generational journey.
Mhm.
I
Um,
think TLC has cut that back a bit. It's not as much. NBC was definitely all about, it was a journey, and we went many different places. We talked 2 or 3 stories. And
Yeah.
TLC's first season, if you recall, it was one story.
mhm.
Right.
Which I liked because you got to see a lot more um, in depth.
Yes.
You got to see a lot more about a person and that ancestor and how that affected them and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so I'm excited for who you think you are to see how this season goes.
Yeah, I'm excited.
Yeah, there are quite a few of my favorite actors on there, so I'm looking forward to that.
I'm excited
Ooh.
because they're going to Ireland.
Okay. I want to
Yay.
know how they do the one in China because
Yeah,
I
that'll
haven't
be.
seen anyone go there yet, so that would be interesting. New
Yeah, I think
country.
Henry Louis Gates is gone with his show, but
Mm-hmm.
I don't
I was like,
think there's
somebody's
been
gone to
any.
China.
Well, I
Yeah,
don't know if they actually went there or they just sent a researcher. Like,
true.
I don't think he went. I think he had a researcher who brought him the information. You know what I mean?
Mhm, it's
Right,
possible.
right.
And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're not actually. It's Julie Chen, right, that they're sending?
Mhm.
Yeah. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe she isn't going and she just gets to learn about it from afar, but that would be
Stan.
fantastic.
Yeah, definitely.
I'd be like, dude, send me.
Yeah, my stepdad gets to travel there quite often. He's a commercial pilot, and so he flies in all the time, and brings back these awesome presents for us for Christmas. And
That's cool.
I'm like, I love China.
Can I be adopted? Can I be adopted?
I'll check into that.
Oh, okay.
Do you have a preference? Do you like scarves or jewelry?
Silk.
Yes, he usually gets at least one really cool silk item. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
it's
my
pretty
kind of
awesome.
thing.
Cool. We'll just place our orders now.
That's right. So, like we kind of hinted earlier when the show started, we were talking beforehand about how we're each thinking about submitting stories to Genealogy Roadshow because we want to show our support. And maybe we'll get picked, and that would be awesome. But we thought maybe it would be cool to tell you about some of our family mysteries, maybe get some ideas and hints from you out there in YouTube land, and let you know what we're thinking about and some of our brick walls, just because family stories are fun. So, who wants to go first? Jen?
Put me on the spot.
I did.
You're good at that, Shannon.
I am. I'm sorry.
Well, I was kind of waffling between two different stories, but I'm going to go with my great grandfather, Meyer Krieger, who is the source of many of my family mysteries. He he immigrated to America in 1901 from Belarus and came and settled in Michigan City, Indiana. And he came and lived with his yay Indiana. And he came and lived with his aunt and her family and settled in the area and stayed in the area and got married and all that kind of stuff. Well, according to my grandmother, who was his daughter, um, his mother had come to America to visit and then had gone back to Israel to live out her days. And we're not really sure when this happened, where she ended up, if she ended up in Jerusalem or another city in Israel. And so it's kind of been like this mystery of, well, did she end up going there and staying with someone she knew, some family? What is the story here? And of course, she's got a really cool name. Her first name is Zippy. We love
I
Zippy.
love it. Love it.
Yeah. I think her proper name is Zipporah, but she went by Zippy. And I've found a couple little clues. Like I found some newspaper articles, thanks to being involved with ProGen. I found out that Meyer had received a letter from his mom in 1914, and that was the last he'd heard of her. And of course, that's around World War I. Who the heck knows what happened over there. So
Right.
I want to know more. Where is she buried?
Yeah. What happened to her?
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah. Plus, I don't know anything about if his siblings stayed over there in Belarus, and if there's family there, and if they eventually came over. I know nothing. So it's one of those mysteries.
Eastern European research.
Yes.
Not a specialty of mine.
Well, and it's hard because, of course, with world wars, so many places were destroyed, and of course, many of the Jewish people were destroyed. So, even if I did have relatives that had stayed there, who knows where they ended up. So, I'm hoping that they all came over here to America, but, it's a mystery.
Right.
So that's my puzzle that I stew on every once in a while.
Ooh, that's a good one too.
Yeah. Where are you, Zippy?
And is that an unusual name, or do you think that's a fairly common name? I mean, I would hope that if it was in it. Oh, okay.
No, but the last name is Krieger, and there are lots of Kriegers.
Okay. Well, sometimes you can get lucky, with like unusual names. Like, have you ever looked at passenger lists?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, okay, never mind.
Yeah.
You probably had, but I'm trying to be helpful.
That's okay. I just need to find a friend over in Israel to, really take this on.
How about you, Terry? Do you have any advice for her, or are you ready to move on to your story?
I have no advice.
Oh, Terry's story.
All right, Terry, which one did you pick? Because I know you were mulling over a couple.
And I'm still sitting here going, which one?
Well, do I need to go next while you consider still?
No, I'll go.
Okay.
I'll go with one that I worked my whole year and a half of ProGen on.
Oh, God.
Truly, the whole year and a half was dedicated to one family. So my Jonas family, which lived in Morton Grove, Illinois, they were there 1870-ish. I believe the family had 14 children. And all I know is that all of the children's birth records state that the parents' place of birth is Pomerania. That's how it's stated on each record. But there's another family, if not in Morton Grove, very close to Morton Grove, that is a Jonas family as well. They have pretty close to the same amount of kids. And as these families were having kids, they were naming them the same thing.
Oh, dear.
At the same time.
No.
So in the same order. So I really, for a long time, were thinking that, they've got to be related. They've got to be related. Well, I finally found it was my second great-grandmother's death certificate that told me where she was buried. She's buried in St. Matthew's Cemetery. It's a very small German cemetery in Niles, Illinois. And we went there and found her. And I was so excited because there was a headstone right next to her for Willie Jonas. And in our family, we have a William Jonas that was killed by a train in the city. So I was so excited that he was very close. Well, it turns out Willie Jonas is not our William Jonas. He died a couple of years later than our William, and he belongs to the other family. But he was born the same year as our William Jonas, died about 2 or 3 years later. So, he was still a very young man when he died. But just beyond him was the other Jonas parents.
Oh, no.
Yep. And then on the other side of my my second great grandparents is John and Ida Jonas, who are children of the other Jonas couple.
Ugh.
So my Jonases are sitting here surrounded by all these Jonases. Oh, and did I tell you that someone's walked off with all the cemetery paperwork?
Oh,
No.
So there's nothing.
Oh, no. That
that
stinks.
sucks.
So I haven't tied them together.
Yeah.
But I spent that whole year and a half opening up everything, trying just to get that proof. I got nothing.
Wow.
So, if you're related to Johann and Johanna Jonas or Wilhelm and Marie Jonas, please drop me a line.
That's awesome.
I would like to see some DNA out of the Johann and Johanna line.
There you go.
Yeah, that would help.
You know what I was suggesting, right? You knew it was
Of course you did.
right? Oh, that is
Pray for
funny.
me. It will take forever to unravel that.
CNN solution to everything. DNA.
That's right. Spit in a tube, damn it. Can't help it. It's in my
Yeah.
DNA. Ha, ha, ha.
But if it answers the question,
Yeah.
maybe I can't find the paperwork that's going to connect them.
Right.
Right.
Maybe the DNA will. The thing that makes it a little weary is that Johann was, I believe, 14 years senior to Wilhelm.
Mm.
Wilhelm came here first. Johann and his family followed later.
Oh.
So I just thought that was maybe a little backwards.
Well, if they're related, maybe he's a younger member of the family and the older members came over later.
I mean, it's possible.
I don't
Obviously,
know.
anything's possible. But so at the 14-year age gap kind of threw me for a loop. I'm like, are they cousins? Is it really a brother situation? I just, in my heart of hearts, I say that they're brothers, just the way they named these kids.
Yeah.
So, and really what threw it all open for me was looking through Cook County marriages.
Mm-hmm.
One of Johann's children got married. His daughter Emma, I think it was. No, it was their son John that got married. And in the Cook County records, for this time period, the witnesses aren't on there. The witnesses signed that piece of paperwork.
Oh.
So I went and then I searched the witnesses and found out it was John's sister and then her soon-to-be husband.
Mm.
So it kind of closed off that circle for me on who's who.
Right.
But yeah.
Oh, that just stinks.
Yeah.
And have you, I don't know if it would help or not, but have you searched on Family Search? They have a whole bunch of Pomeranian records.
I've been through there, and actually
Okay.
when we were in Salt Lake City, I actually saw and talked with a lady from, I believe she was from Poland.
Oh, that's funny.
Went over it with her.
Good.
So, because of the location, Pomerania, it's like they could really be anything. It could be a Polish, it could be German, those blessed border changes.
Oh, yeah.
Just really don't know what the family is. So she's given me a bunch of websites, and I really just need to have time to sit and, research my own family.
Right.
I'll let you know
Wait a minute.
time.
What's that? Research your own family? What? That's crazy talk.
So.
Okay. My turn?
Yep.
Yes.
This one will make Terry happy. It's an Irish family.
Oh, I was going to say, did you solve one of mine?
No. No, I did not. Okay, so this is my story, and I'm going to tell you the story my grandmother told me first, because it's more entertaining than the truth. So I grew up with the story her grandfather told her about his parents. Okay? Her grandfather's name was William Brennan, and he was born about 1860 in Nashville, Tennessee. He had an older brother named Timothy Brennan, who was born in Baltimore in 1858, and a younger sister named Mary, who was born in Indiana in 1862. And the reason they moved is because his father, John Brennan, worked for the B&O Railroad. He was working his way basically across country building railroad lines. Now, the story my grandmother that I grew up with was that her great-grandparents, so her grandfather's mother and father, came from the west coast of Ireland on a boat together. And it was John and his brother and Bridget and her sister. And they went from port to port in the 1850s being turned away because they were Irish. And they finally landed at a port, but the women weren't going to be allowed off the boat unless they got married. So Bridget married John, who they met on board, and her sister married someone else. Okay? And, they landed in the U.S., they made their way across the country. He was working for the railroad. And in Indiana, he was out one day working, laying the tracks for the railroad, and the boys were they were like 6, they were about 2 years apart, so like 4 and 6 years old. They were living in a tent city with the railroad. She had left the boys and the baby in the tent and gone to get supplies. And there was a fight in the street, and she was killed by a stray bullet that went through a tent.
Oh, dear.
And by the time John got back to the tent city, the baby had been kidnapped.
Wow.
Okay, so this is what my grandmother told me, right? And that and that William and Timothy and their sister, because I guess there was a fourth baby who had been kidnapped, and the sister were all put into the Catholic orphanage in Vincennes, Indiana, because they were Irish Catholics. The boys went to St. Vincent de Paul, and the girl went to the sister's house that was there. And she was adopted almost immediately. She was placed with another Irish family named Kearney. So and they kept in touch with the family. Like Mary actually taught my grandmother painting as a teenager. She was a fantastic oil and watercolor painter. She lived in Indianapolis, was amazing, I guess, absolutely amazing artist. And my dad actually has several pieces of hers, huge pieces, at the house. But that was about 1863, 1862, 1863.
Mm-hmm.
The boys lived in the orphanage basically until they were farmed out. My grandmother said that their father was killed in an Indian raid somewhere out west when he was laying the railroad, and basically about the time the boys reached 10, they were sent to work on farms in the community. And William, my grandmother's grandfather, stayed in the area, eventually getting a job with the B&O Railroad, and he worked for the B&O Railroad for 40 years. And so did his son, and so did my grandfather. I have a 4-generation B&O Railroad family.
Cool.
So that's what I grew up with, that there was this dramatic thing, and there was a child kidnapped, and they were somewhere from Ireland, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. About probably 3 years ago, I get a manila envelope in the mail. And it's stuff that my dad's sister had found. It was like sitting in a drawer, and she knew I was doing this genealogy thing, so she sent it to me. And in it is a 1-page memoir written by William.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, I have to say. And it kind of changed a lot of what Grandma said. Because he says that, he gives the dates the dates all match for about, when Timothy, William, and Mary were all born. It says that his parents immigrated to the United States from Galway, and that his mother's last name was Gherardi. Um, it talks about how his mother died. It doesn't say how, but it talks about how his mother died in Madison, Indiana, and that his sister and his brother and him were put into the orphanage in Vincent. So we're still pretty good here, right? Right, right. And then it talks about how in 1875, so over 10 years later, the orphanage is notified by the railroad that their father had been killed in Kansas on a railroad accident.
Mm.
And that's all I got. So what I would like to know is, where did they come from, right? Because Brennan is a common name, darn it. And John and Bridget, gosh darn it.
Yeah.
Really? So I'd like to know where they came over, like what port did they land? It was that whole port, having to go from stay on the ship and you couldn't get off unless you were married thing real? Did they move around because he was on the railroad then? Was she shot and killed in some gunfight, through a tent? And how did John die? I have no idea. The only thing I've ever found is this one mention of it by William about how the orphanage got a telegram from the railroad.
Have you reached out to the railroads?
See, there was this fire in about 1920 in Baltimore.
No, of course.
Because actually I did. The B&O Railroad has an archives and museum and library in Baltimore.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually called the archivist. He was very nice. He called me back. We talked for almost an hour on the phone, and I gave him all the details I could. And he actually was able to send me my great-great-grandfather William, his employment record. It was basically two index cards with, just a listing, but it had like his death date on it. And he sent me a couple magazine articles because the B&O Railroad used to have a quarterly magazine that went out to their employees.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually had his obituary from the railroad in it. And he was able to send me a few things on his son, so my grandmother's father, Timothy. It was able to, that's repeating of those names again.
Of course.
Was able to send me some things for him as well, but unfortunately the vast majority of the records were lost in the fire that consumed the B&O Railroad headquarters in the 1920s in Baltimore. So, but I've tried to look for, newspapers. I'm thinking, if it was a railroad accident or if there was like an Indian attack, maybe there's a newspaper out there somewhere.
Well, that was my first thought.
I haven't been able to find one yet.
Yeah.
And Kansas in 1875 was still pretty Wild West, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's the story I would love to have somebody tell me all about. Because Grandma's story is really fascinating, and part of me wonders if this is part of her storytelling line that told me I was related to an Indian princess.
No.
Yeah. So, but that was the only story. See, the weird thing about my grandmother was she didn't like to talk about her family. She wanted to talk about my grandfather's family. And this was like one of the stories she would tell me about. So I kind of hung on to that this whole time, since I was a little kid, because she was like, you don't want to hear about my family. We're all German and Irish immigrants. You don't want to hear about us. Your grandfather, he has Revolutionary War soldiers and he goes back to the Mayflower and blah, 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 blah. You want to know about those and here are the books to read. And it's like, no, tell me about the immigrants and the farmers and yeah.
The salt of the earth.
That's right. I am from a long line of farmers and nobodies.
Well, that's a fascinating story.
It is.
Yeah, my first thought was newspapers.
Yeah, I just don't know.
But I'm sure that's got to be needle in a haystack.
Yeah, her story is much more lively.
Yeah.
Let all those facts get in the way.
You know, theatrical flair.
That's right. That's right. We're all storytellers deep down inside.
Definitely.
Well, do you ladies have another story you want to share?
Mm,
You know I can
Terry?
keep talking. Okay, Terry.
Well, to go along with your kidnapped child,
Mm-hmm.
we have a family story of a kidnapped child. Let me get my time frame right here. In the mid to late, actually, I can't even see. In the late 1800s in Ohio, I have our Hilton family. So I have John James Hilton and Susie Kerr were married, and they had roughly 10 kids. And one of the youngest kids was either Harry or Henry. We're not really sure. But Susie was in the hospital, and the baby was left with the neighbor for a couple of nights while Susie was in the hospital getting better from whatever she was in there for. I don't know. She had another baby. I don't know what the full story is. And I didn't have time to pull it out to read before we got on. But the night before Susie was to come home, in the middle of the night, the neighbors ran off,
Oh.
took the kid, and he was never heard from.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, and I will tell you, when I get together with the elder generation of this is my grandma's family on my mom's side, they all say, we just want to know where the baby is. You know, obviously he's still not living, but they just want to know what happened to poor Harry Henry.
Yeah.
Right. That's
So, if you've taken a DNA test and you're not who you think you are, and you've got the name,
You might be.
contact me.
that's funny. Wow, a real life kidnapping.
Kind of a similar story, but it was a parent who stole the baby.
Oof.
My uncle, Bruce Morse, who is the last of his generation, he's been wondering for years and years and years whatever happened to Arthur Morse. He was he served in the Merchant Marines during World War II, and he met this lady named Irene. We don't know her last name. They got married, and she was from like Delaware or something. And they ended up having a baby named Helena. And after a couple of years, I think it was 2 or 3 years old, Helena was taken by her mother back to Delaware or wherever they were from, and nobody in the family has ever heard anything more. And so to this day, my uncle is like, I just want to know what happened to her. And, she was born in 1944, so it's very possible she's still alive and probably is wondering, why do I have the surname Morse? Whatever happened to my father? So, poor Arthur, he actually ended up dying on a shipwreck on Lake Superior.
Oh,
He
wow.
was serving on this ship, and they had a fire, and it was in the winter, and there weren't enough life jackets for everyone, so he actually gave up his jacket for a younger man who had a family. And so Arthur ended up going down with the ship, and this other young man survived. And so poor Arthur, he kind of had a rough go of it, and kind of a tragic story. But I can't help but wonder if his daughter's out there somewhere.
Oh,
That's sad.
Yeah,
that's real sad.
but we still wonder, where's Helena?
I want my hanky now.
Oh, sad.
It is sad. I don't have any other stories, thankfully, about kidnapped children.
Well, that's good.
Yeah, I'm just going to put that out there.
Let's not have any more.
Yeah, please. Gosh, well, we all have so many different brick walls and problem cases, but I think One of the ones that I think I'm probably going to keep working on until literally the day I die is my mother's line,
Mm-hmm.
because there is a horrible divide in the family over where we came from.
Mm.
Um, the surname that is in question is Arvin, Arvin. It's an unusual surname. Um, most people who have that surname who are from Maryland, Kentucky, or Indiana can all trace their lines back to colonial Maryland to the same person, which is my family.
Wow.
Um, but it like all of a sudden appears on the face of the earth. Like there are theories that maybe it's Hardin, but changed, or maybe it's supposed to be an I instead of an A, and we've just kept the Arvin spelling.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but it seems like majority of the people in the U.S. who can who have this surname can trace it back to colonial Maryland.
Hmm.
And doing research with another researcher who lives in St. Louis, which is why I can't wait to go to NGS so we can meet up again for the second time in my life. Um, he's been researching the Arvin line. He's an Arvin also since the early 1970s.
Oh,
And
wow.
he's written one of the there's two different surname books out there that you can find. He's written one of them on it. And his research led him back to who he thinks the immigrant ancestor is, which is Thomas Arvin, who landed in Maryland, who was born in Maryland about 1714. And he thinks that it was his father, who may have been a man named John, but he's not sure, who came over as an indentured servant from Ireland.
Oh. Mm.
But that's all kind of up in the air. Now, we
Okay.
know Thomas. We know he married a woman named Sarah Darnell. And we know that they had my ancestor, Edward Arvin, who married Sally Paget. And Edward actually fought with the Maryland Continental Line in the Revolutionary War. And then his son, Henry, and well, actually, one of his sons, Henry, and like four of his other sons and a whole bunch of other family members after the Revolutionary War. Henry fought in the War of 1812. So after the War of 1812, moved to Washington County, Kentucky, with a lot of the other Catholics who migrated from Maryland to Kentucky to open Catholic settlements there, and kind of seeded that area with the family name. And then Henry and all but I think two of his children and some of his brothers moved on into Indiana, where I'm from. And that's where the second wave of Arvins came from. And that's all we know. We know we came from Maryland. We have no idea where the surname came from. We have this vague idea that it might be related to a man who came over as an indentured servant from Ireland.
Hmm.
And that could have been Thomas. It could have been Thomas's father. We're just not quite sure. And it's one of those, the family, from what my mother has said, has been arguing for 50 years about this. Like
Oh.
her father and his brothers would argue about this. Okay, and they're all gone now. So there
So
was
it's now
one,
to you.
yeah. Well, before me was my cousin Charlie. And
Right.
Charlie was the family genealogist. And he went along with Bob Arvin's theory that we're from this indentured servant and we're from Maryland. And unfortunately, because of the War of 1812, there's some record loss in the part of Maryland we're from. And while there's this gut feeling that Edward and Henry are father and son, I have not been able to definitively prove it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that's another thing that's kind of, but Charlie was like, oh, yes, this is our line. Sorry, my dog's barking. And this is, where we're from, and we're from Ireland. But the funny thing is, one of our family members got online, okay, when like the internet was new, back in the late 90s, and they found a professor in Denmark who had the last name of Arvin. And my cousin got all excited, and they wrote to him, and they're like, "Oh my God, we're Danish!" And he said, "No, I'm just over here. I'm actually from California."
I love it.
And we're like,
Go figure.
"We're not Danish." Well, there goes that idea.
Yeah.
I've even had I have had a male with the surname Arvin. Two of them have taken DNA tests. Don't match anybody, beyond like the 25 marker. So it's,
Yeah.
I've had every single cousin of my mother's who would take a DNA test, hoping we can find something out. And so far, we're all related to each other.
Well, that's good.
I got that down. But I'm not having much luck finding anybody else. So
Yeah.
someday. But say, if you're looking for people to cast, there's 6 stories for you.
Right?
And
I'm sure
I
my
hope
Uncle Bruce would love to find out what happened to Helena.
that's right.
That would be a great story for that.
That would be a great story. That would be great TV if you could find it.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's got to be
Troy
out
Dunn. Troy Dunn. Call the locator. That's his job.
You're killing me here. Sorry, just shouting out names.
Don't y'all watch him?
Yes.
No.
Okay.
I know who he is, yes. But I'm like, dude, non sequitur. Yeah. Well, ladies, do you have anything else to tonight's chit chat before we close for the evening? 'Cause we've been talking for almost 45 minutes. Once we get started, it's kind of hard to be quiet, isn't it?
I'm
Well,
good.
it's fun to talk about our families. We can't help it.
It is fun to talk about our families because very few people ask us.
Right.
That's good.
We're so used to talking about other people's families or shows or something else when we actually have a chance to be genealogists. It's kind of fun, especially when you have a captive audience.
Absolutely.
Well, since you all don't have anything to add, I think we should wrap up for this evening because I know we have other things that we need to do tonight. Next week, there's no Genealogy Roadshow, so you'll have to come by and see what surprise we have cooked up for you then. Thanks again, Jen and Terry, for joining me tonight. It's always great to be able to talk to people.
Yes.
Let's see here. Remember, you out there in YouTube land and on the internet, we would love to hear from you. So please drop us a line. You can send us an email to editor@theinDepthGenealogist.com. You can put a note here in the YouTube comments. Go out to our Facebook page or follow us on Twitter. Just let us know what you think and tell us how much you like the show. We'd really love to hear some feedback from you. And on that note, have a great day and remember to go in depth with all of your ancestors. Bye.